It started off by noticing that redstone contraptions in my world that previously worked flawlessly started to rarely break. I shrugged it off at first, but then I noticed that friends of mine had similar challenges. And then my eyes opened when I saw the comment sections of YouTube and Reddit. Today we talk about something that is present everywhere, but most redstone videos do not talk about it, although the redstone will be influenced by it. We talk about chunk loading and how it affects 90% or more contraptions out there. If these effects are not considered during the design or the build of the redstone device, it will surely lead to surprises. Let's start at the beginning. You're in a world walking in one direction or maybe flying with an elytra, and things around you move, like the animals or the plants around you grow, maybe monsters chase you. However, all this is true only for a certain area around the player, where the time is running. Everywhere else, the Minecraft world is frozen. Technically speaking, the chunks are not processed. When you walk in one direction, chunks become unfrozen so that the time is running normally when you arrive there. And the chunks that you left behind, far behind you, become frozen in time. But what does that mean for redstone? Let's shed some light onto it. Let's start with an illustrative example. Here we have two minecarts running back and forth, and we have a detector rail here giving a signal to the distance whenever the minecart is rolling over it. This one is slightly pushed to the back, one block, as you can see, and this one is a little bit closer. And now let's watch what happens. Watch both minecarts. And as they will disappear in the distance, right here at the edge, you will see that one of them stopped working, whereas the other continues to work. And we can see this as well by the redstone signal. So the one minecart is frozen in time and no longer gives a signal, whereas the other one gives a signal. If we now go closer to this area again, also this area will become unfrozen and the minecart will resume its activity. Let's look at another example. So here we have again our minecart as a reference point, because we know already how it works. And then we have a basic observer clock, just to also bring in another component. So this one is observing this one, and this one observing this one, giving this constant pulse. And we have another one here, a little bit further away, also giving off a pulse in this direction. Now I will go into this far end and we will observe here the three lines, if they will keep on pulsing like they do at the moment. And as you can see here by the result, this is the minecart one, it stopped pulsing. This is something we know already. And this is the observer line from the observer very far away. It stops pulsing, but this one keeps on pulsing. Maybe you expected the result. If not, that's also perfectly fine. This example is just to show you that while the minecart becomes frozen and no longer gives off signals, other components, for example like the observer, this one here, will keep on working. Whereas observers, if they are too far away, will also stop working. Here in the unfrozen area, that's where we are close by, the observers work, the minecarts would work. We also know that the redstone does work here, as well as the repeaters. And this unfrozen area is also called technically entity processing area or entity processing chunk. This area here, that we have in cyan has always the property in our test here also to be like a half frozen area. Half frozen meaning that some components work and some don't. So for example, the observer clock here, the middle one, actually worked, and also the repeaters worked. We saw that at the end. But the minecart, for example, didn't work. The half frozen area also is called technically lazy chunks by the technical people, but this is, yeah, how we would call it. And then we have over here, this is even further distance away from our testing area here. We call it like the frozen area, and the technical people typically call this unloaded chunk, although they are technically can be loaded, but they're not processing. But yeah, we call it like the frozen area here for our continuous testing purposes. When we demonstrate here that this and this is no longer pulsing and only this one is, we're having these long redstone wires. And you may say, well, I don't have those in my world, so why bother? But the fact is that we can feel the effect of this not working, not just here where we are, but all the way up to the minecart. And the same is for this observer clock. So the effect can be felt all the way along. So if you have any kind of a contraption somewhere attached here, the effect is real. We just need this type of setup here just to help us, because if we would move over there, we unfreeze the area and we change the outcome of the experiment. So we are really just having these wires just for controlling the experiment and see on what is going on in the far distance. Let's check out the next redstone component. Let's have a look at hopper pipes. This time also we will not wire up any redstone connection here. We will just use them as such. Here we still have a simple pipe, and if I put in 16 items, they are gonna be transferred to the chest. Here we have in principle the same pipe, except that we also have a filter. This is a standard item filter, which some people use for sorting systems, for example. And stone, for example, is gonna be filtered here. And if I put in 16 items here, they are gonna be ending up down here and not here. So here the 16 item already made it through. This one is still empty. And the 16 items are correctly filtered into the stone box. Okay, let's now put in 5 stacks of items here and also here, 5 stacks of stone. And this time I will leave so the area and just wait here. I will also accelerate the time a little bit so that we don't have to wait so long. Yeah, and then we go back and see what happened. So they are still funneling in here in the hopper chain, but what you will see is that there's a massive blob of items in this hopper here, almost overflowing. And the same is here. Massive blob. And with this massive blob, the items are getting funneled down, but also this hopper is pushing them to the right. So that we are not correctly filtering here. Some are here and some are here. So in this case, this simple sorting system already broke, or at least has reduced functionality. And what happened here is that we have the half frozen area and then the frozen area, and this hopper here is pushing items into this hopper, which is in the frozen area, and this hopper is not able to push them away because he was frozen since we were in this position down there. And the same happened here for the sorting system. Let's look at another example. So we have here 3 times the same contraption. We have an observer clock, which is powering this cycle here, which powers like this around. And then this is always off, and the piston never extends, and we have a watermelon on on top. So if we, let's say for example, disrupt here the circuit, then we see that the piston extends and destroys the watermelon block. As you can see here, we have this, and we have this exact same setup here, and we have the exact same setup here, 3 times. And this is another case where I just would like to show that it doesn't matter if we run any lines or anything down into that area, or are somehow otherwise observing it from very far. We really just have these 3 contraptions, and one of the 3 will break. But I will not say which one. You can guess, but don't be sad if you guess the wrong one, because the way it's set up at the moment, it's impossible to guess. But yeah, then let's go back, and it's always the middle one that breaks, as you can see here. And this is a very consistent result. And the reason for that is that this one here is in the half-frozen area. And we know already that this clock continues to run, continuous feeding this part, so this one never breaks. This one is consistently in the frozen area. So when we are down there, the whole part here becomes frozen. And when we come back here to check the result, the whole part becomes unfrozen and continues to work. So this one resumes the work. This one, however, is right in between half-frozen and frozen area, and you can check that yourself if you press F3 and G when you're playing Minecraft. You will see the so-called chunks, and this clock here is right in between. So this one will be frozen and this one will be unfrozen because it's gonna be in the half-frozen area, and then this clock stops, and when this stops, the watermelon breaks. And this is a very generic result. So all contraptions or all results, if you have parts of your redstone system working, whereas other parts of the system are not working because they are frozen, then it's very, very, very likely that your system is going to have some problems, issues, or faults, or unexpected behavior, like this one, for example. So those two never break, and this one, when we fly away with elytra or run away, will always break. Although it's the very same set of components and the very same settings we have for the components, we have got a different result. After already we kind of broke a basic storage system, let's also try to break dropper elevators. So we bring in some droppers as well as some components here to lift up the items. And this is a design by Mango. And we have it in 3 positions here. So this one is completely in the frozen area. This one is having hoppers and droppers in the half-frozen area, whereas this part is in the frozen area. And this one is having the hoppers in the half-frozen area and the droppers in the frozen area. Okay, that was a tongue twister. So I will now put 64, okay. I will put now 64 diamonds here onto each of those. Let's check, it's empty, okay. And then we try to see if also chunk loading can cause problems for such a simple contraption. No, there we go. So marked here some spots. So we now have to wait a little bit and yeah, see how reliable these dropper elevators are, this type of design. Let's have a look. So this one is flashing. That means it's working. Okay, more and more coming in. This one is not flashing. so maybe it's done already. But actually it's not done. So the items are stuck and the system broke. Let's have a look at this one. It's also not blinking. Also not complete. And the items down here are also stuck. And the system broke. This one kept on working because it was frozen in time completely, because it was in one chunk and then was completely unfrozen, and so it resumed its activity. Both of those dropper elevators here, they have some kind of a chunk border, which led to the issue that items, for example, were pushed in here, but could not be pushed up fast enough because the system is relying on the fact that it's immediately taking this item away. But were pushed in here, but weren't handled, so this system broke here. And the same here, the system, items were pushed in here, but the system couldn't handle it because this part is frozen and more items came in here, and this design relies on the fact that there's a maximum of one item in here. And this is why this type of design will break at chunk borders. So these are just a few contraptions I've shown, but yeah, we could continue and show more and more and more and over, and we will see that a lot of contraptions are actually affected by this phenomenon. And yeah, it's also, I think, one of the things that you could do, or that we could do, as well as some of the other stuff which I will explain later, is of course always also to challenge the YouTubers we watch, where we have inspiration Redstone-wise, to use also or to point out certain things. So we can ask if the contraption, for example, is working at chunk borders or not, and yeah, the maker of the contraption maybe has the answer, and if not, maybe someone in the comment section has the answer. But we need to get to a state, I think, in Minecraft where we not just describe redstone contraptions with it's lossless, it's fast, it's silent, it's compact, but also its ability to handle, yeah, still being processable in chunk borders. So don't get me wrong, so I don't blame the constructor of this contraption or the previous ones at all, especially because some of these chunk loading mechanics changed. So this may have worked very flawlessly in, let's say, 1.12, but now it no longer works, in chunk borders at least. And so this is one aspect of it. And also, I also don't blame them, because it's also very, for all the contraptions that are affected, it's also very tedious to test, because you have the very same thing, just putting one block or turned around a little bit and suddenly it does not work. So it's very, very tricky to test, especially if the system is big. And it's also not very... if you test it, you're always around your contraption, so it's always active and it's never in the position that you are really the perfect distance away. So it's also very easy to forget to test something like that. So yeah, I think one of the activities that we can do is also to challenge our favorite YouTubers, always to ask if the contraption can also work at chunk borders. Yeah, because a lot of, like I say, if I look in online, I think 90% of the contraptions, at least, that are supposed to work when you walk away, that are actually affected by chunk border loading issues. And yeah, it can be very sad if you have a survival world, if you build something in Redstone and then you later realize that items despawned or systems clogging up and you have to manually find the source of the problem. So yeah, we can do better, and we will also show some of the stuff what we can do better here in this video still. So it's not, we are not all lost, but yeah, let's move on to the next section to understand a little bit more, first of all, on what is going on. Maybe just one more thought. These experiments, of course, here for testing, I have a certain setting in order to provoke these issues when it comes to render distance, for example, so that I know exactly that I don't have to walk too far. I just wanted to say as well that the render distance itself doesn't matter for these issues. So always when you fly out with an elytra, for example, or walk away, it doesn't matter if you have render distance 6, 10, or 15. These things will always happen at the its respective border. So it's not a question of render distance at all. It's very inherent of the system. Okay, let's have a look at one more sample. So here we have 3 buttons, which are redstone wired here up to this point. Then the first button will turn around immediately and give us a signal back. The second button will go here into the frozen area, go around here, and then give us a signal back. And the third one will also go into the frozen area with an additional repeater. So now let's go over here and observe what happens. So here with the normal button press, we see also the length of the pulse. Shortly after the button press, the pulse arrives, like so. Now let's test the one which goes into the frozen area. And it also arrives. It's at least something that surprised me. Maybe it also surprises you. But the pulse arrives. Now let's check the one which goes into the unloaded area, into the frozen area, with an additional repeater. And the pulse does not arrive. If we walk over now and unfreeze this area, we will see the pulse arriving now, but shorter. Just maybe also to repeat it. Nothing happens, but if we walk over, the pulse arrives. Again, the fact that we are just so far away from this area there really doesn't matter. It's really just a help for us here to trigger things and to measure things, but actually the same thing that we see here is happening down there, and the same thing that is triggering here could also be triggered somewhere down there as part of a redstone contraption. And this is a very specific phenomenon. So here the pulse length is kept, but here we have that the pulse is frozen, and that is delivered then later when the area is unfrozen, as you see here. But this is also has another issue. If you pulse this one now, and if you pulse them a second time, you could guess that there are 2 pulses now coming down the road. But if we unfreeze this area now, you would see it's just 1 pulse. So this is a very important effect that is also putting a strain on some of the redstone components, is that pulse length, but also pulse amount, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, can be changed because of the pulse going into an unloaded chunk, into a frozen chunk. And this can be very unexpected and lead to very weird behaviors as well. And also, it's good to know as well that redstone wiring, because the middle button worked, actually shortly unfreezes the frozen area to process the redstone. So this is also something that may not be so easily to expect. But if there's a redstone component like this in between, then the signal will freeze. Let's have another look at pistons, shall we? So here we will try from very far to push these blocks. So push the gold in this direction, and also push the gold here into the frozen area. So at the moment it's in line here with the iron block. And then we do a pull test here, where we try to pull out this iron block from the frozen area, and we also in comparison just try to pull an item here in the half frozen area, like so. Alright. I will now flick the lever. And then let's see what happened. So the gold was pushed. Also, it was pushed into the frozen area. And as you can see here, also this was retracted, and also that the item was, or the block was pulled from the frozen area. So also the pistons have some effect into these areas. So this is the last sample I want to give, where some people may find certain of the behavior unexpected. So we wired up a dropper here to trigger it from far, and we have blocks of diamonds here, and then we have a water stream for delivery. So this could be a regular water stream from a farm, or it could be part of your storage system or something. And let's see what happens. Yeah, we are so far away now that the dropper will be in the frozen area, and I will trigger him 5 times. We can already guess what is happening based on the previous example. So when I now walk over, the area will unfreeze. The 5 individual pulses will be aggregated, and we will get only 1 diamond. Again, it doesn't matter if we trigger these 5 pulses here or anywhere down the road. It could also be right next to the dropper somewhere, and we will have the same issue. We will get 5 pulses, but we just get 1 item. Now let's walk to this over here. Now the dropper is half frozen. This area is now half frozen, and we will give it again 5 pulses. Now I will walk over to unfreeze the area to see the result. And we get 1 stack of 5 diamond blocks. So they are all clumped together. And now let's go into the normal part. That means now the dropper is completely loaded in the active area, and we check 5 times. You see them all arriving 1 by 1. Kind of what you would expect that. This is just to show you that we actually, with this type of chunk loading, if we would have here a clock running, giving full 5 pulses to this dropper, that we get 3 different results depending on where we are in the world. If we stand here, where these pulses happen, and then walk into the area, make it alive, all these 5 pulses will be summed up just to 1, giving us just 1 diamond. If these 5 pulses happen while we are here and the area is half frozen, the items are spit out, but they are not delivered. Because also items, as all entities in the half frozen area, are frozen. So the 5 items, diamonds, will be directly in front, clumped together. And we will get 5 as 1 batch. If we keep everything alive right away, if we're standing here when the 5 pulses are active, each of them will be arriving individually. So we get 5 individual blocks of diamond. So yeah, there you have it. Maybe unexpected, maybe we expected for you, but 3 different results just based on our position here in the world. And the effect of chunk loading and frozen, unfrozen areas on simple contraptions. So everything weird, everything strange, everything bad. No, not so fast. So let's see what we can do. And here we are at the dropper elevator again, where two of them stopped working. And I just want to show you as well that with a few changes in the design, that in this case, for example, the design is based on the fact that just one item is in here, that we can reactivate the comparator to give more pulses, to pulse the whole tower to continue running. And yeah, I just want to show you as well, like such an extension here. And I started to build this one here already. Will make the comparator resume all the time, like so. And then also the remaining items will be put up. This one is done already, perfect. And this one is still going, but we can also leave the area now and stay here somewhere in between. And now with the Chudson addition, it's possible that the dropper elevator even works when it's at the chunk border. And this is just to show that this is in principle possible. It doesn't need to be that chunk borders always need to cause a problem. It's also a question of design. And I don't know if this is the best solution to it, or if there are better ones, more compact ones, or anything. But that doesn't really matter to get the point, I think. The point really is that it can be healed. Some contraptions can be healed. An alternative of extending the system would have also been to just place the dropper elevator like this into the system as it was before, and this was also fine. So this is, I think, a very general solution. So if you put all the stuff, all the important stuff into one chunk, the chances of issues is a lot less. But this, of course, can't always be the case, right? Because contraptions getting big, so they cross chunk borders for sure. And or you can't do it because you have to have certain output in certain areas, and you cannot just place redstone as you desire. So then you have to use some other strategies. But yeah, it can be one option also to just carefully place certain things into the world, and then you will not incur any of the issues. Here we are with the example again with the observers and the rail. And you can see as an observer what is going on down there by just monitoring the redstone lines. You know exactly that the minecart is not running anymore. And you know exactly that the observer clock, the one in the frozen chunk, is not working anymore. But only this one is working. But the fact that you see it here in redstone means that you can also detect these changes. You can detect if something is half frozen or active. You remember the melon test? So we had this observer clock here placed right at the edge of the chunks. And this way, when the observer here became frozen, we could detect that. And we can use the exact same mechanism also to detect for our redstone when something becomes frozen, and then we can carefully shut down the system without manual intervention. We are now back here at the item sorter, and I placed exactly at this intersection here the same observer clock. And we stabilize here the output with two repeaters, and we know that this clock will stop working for when this part of the system will become frozen, and then also this will turn off. So if we now this invert it and put down some redstone dust here, like so. So the system now is operational as before, but if part of the system this part becomes frozen, the redstone lamp will turn on and turn on everything here, which will deactivate all the hoppers and essentially deactivating the system carefully. So if I now put in 64 stone, the system starts running, and if we now leave the area here to the beginning again, wait a while, and we can come back already now. Without our system addition, we would have a few items blocking up here and then also getting into the chest. But with this system, for example, like a small detection here helps us now to freeze the system correctly, and then it unfreezes correctly and all the items also sorting correctly. Also, to summarize some of the findings we have. So we have all the minecarts. They are only working in the active area, in the unfrozen area. The same will also be for all the other entities, for example, ignited TNT or armor stands, but also dropped items with a dropper or by you or by someone or something. Any dropped items on the floor, like wheat or whatever, they only work when they are in the unfrozen area. Then we had the half-frozen area, where we had these components work normally. And we had a set of components like pistons, droppers, and hoppers that actually also are able to influence the frozen area to some extent. So pushing items over there, or shortly powering certain things and looping back, or even pushing blocks into the frozen area. So these blocks have some effect onto the frozen area. I also said earlier that it's good if you can, for example, put everything in one chunk. Then the chance of having issues is a lot less, and that is also correct. But just also keep in mind that, for example, if you pick like any item of this group here and combine it with any contraption of this group, you will always have a situation where if the contraption becomes half frozen, that these components will work, but these won't. So there's always, like for example, if you use minecarts on hoppers or TNT with some timings or something, you need to be very careful about combining this group with this group. And most of the time here, it can also not be cured. What we did, for example, with the sorting system or the dropper elevator. Most of the time, if you use any of these as part of your build, then you probably are better off having a shutdown mechanism, like a manual or an automated one. Yeah, but this is the combination, so to say, is a bit tricky. With these fixes that we did here, for example, for some of the contraptions, yeah, I just wanted to say as well that I don't know if these are the optimal solution to it or something, but this is also not the purpose of this video. It's more about showing that there is stuff that can be done. So either by you, if you have a redstone contraption, to think about where you exactly place it, and if you place it at borders, if maybe problems can occur, and if yes, how you can cure them. But yeah, it's really just about the process itself, or if someone else is doing the redstone for you because you're following maybe a video from someone else, maybe also think about these things, or maybe ask in the comment section, so that, yeah, over time all the redstone contraptions that we have also getting more resilient, and that some of this stuff here, which can cause problems and headaches, that this stuff is that we can get it out of the way. And I hope this video helped a little bit here in this context, making some of the weird behaviors more visible maybe to you, and maybe more that you are more careful about these things. That's at least what I would hope that this video helped a little bit with. And yeah, if you have any other chunk loading problems already or anything, let me know in the comment section. And if the video helped you in one or the other area as well, yeah, let me also know in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching. Take care and bye bye.